Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe. Very excited for today's show for two reasons. Number one, we just hit our 5th anniversary of the podcast. And number two, I've got the pleasure of talking with Monica Kimutis. So, Monica, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here, Brian. Hopefully we can give listeners some pause and rewind moments and bust some myths while we're at it.
Awesome. Sounds good. So we're going to start out like we always do. And, Monica, I'm relying on you to provide all of the entertainment here. Not all of it, but do us a favor. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So I'm a mom of 4. I live with my family in Knoxville, Tennessee. I work from home in the real estate education industry, but really love any and all things real estate, but also with 4 kids who are really active. We're play with them quite a bit. So my days are real estate and playing sports.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So with all that going on, I mean, you've recently jumped into real estate. What else were you doing before real estate besides, motherhood and everything else? Or was it just full-time mom?
It was full-time mom for a while. I have a degree in international business. Used that a little bit. I don't know that I got bored, but definitely stopped the 9 to 5 once kids came along. And that is really what prompted a exploration into real estate once the kids got a bit older. My husband was a high school teacher, loved what he was doing. With a growing family, it was not providing what we needed. So wanted to find some work that I could do from home with the kids in tow if possible. So I did a few work from home type gigs, but really stumbled upon bigger pockets and learning about real estate to the point where I could see myself doing that. My family is really handy in that if we have home projects, we fix it. So whether it's plumbing or electrical or drywall, like moving doors or what have you, we are really comfortable with that. And so I put on a more serious investor hat about 3 years ago.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. We've got 5, but we have a really, really big spread. That's almost a full-time job by itself. But if you count overtime, it's more than a full-time job. But so, what did getting into real estate look like for you at the beginning?
What really prompted it, I grew up in Idaho and my husband and I were living in Knoxville, Tennessee. My parents were moving to Knoxville, Tennessee. And so I really wanted them to live really close to us. And I read Rich Dad Poor Dad again. I had read it as a teenager, and then certainly reading it again as an adult opened up some new doors and new ways of thinking. But with that mindset, moving forward, I actually just went and knocked on the door of my backyard neighbor's house and asked them to sell if they would, because my parents were moving to Knoxville, and they said yes.
Wow.
So it was a bit of a messy situation. It was an elderly woman who was taking care of her disabled husband and disabled brother, and her house had fallen apart and was needing a lot of attention. But my parents were able to buy it. And then with my kids at that time, I had a 5-year-old, a 3.5-year-old, and essentially a brand new baby at that point. But we were around and we helped my parents fix it up. And even the kids could be involved, right? We found like a little tiny hammer and my kids are knocking down drywall or, appropriate types of activities for the kids.
Kids are really good at destroying. So, when you're going in and breaking things, that's the best part to put them in. Yeah.
Yes. And there was quite a bit of demo work that needed to be done. We touched every square inch of the house, but we also got to see everything. And we were looking down through the studs in the kitchen area. We had to, fix some joist, and it was a heavy remodel, but we did it all ourselves as a family. And I really do treasure that time together. It was a slow process, but that was the start of the trajectory.
Yeah, nice start. And it's nice that you got your parents so close. So
I love it. My husband at times has a bit of a, he's patient. That's true. But if we run out of ice cream or just send the kids across the fence. But I do tell people when I live close to my parents, I remind them I was here first, or my parents moved when I don't necessarily live with them, but it's a great setup.
Yeah, we're close to my wife's sisters, like blocks away from 2 of my wife's. She only has 2 sisters, and it's definitely nice being close to family. There's pros and cons to everything, but we'll look at the nice things about being close to family today. But so that said, take it from there. I mean, started out, kind of fixing up a house for somebody to live in. How do things progress for you there?
I loved the off-market deal
Yep.
scenario. Just knocking on someone's house and asking to buy, and they said yes. That was really, really fun.
Yep.
We ended up doing the same thing next door, and we had a neighbor that was looking to sell as well. We ended up buying that house off market. So now we have 3 houses on 1 acre. We use that as an Airbnb at times. That's where I am right now, actually in a little office area. From there, and that was another really long project of renovation, and that was our whole family was involved, and my sons were a bit older at this point, so they were doing a little bit more of putting a floor in or changing outlets, or they're advancing in their skills of home remodel. And then we had my grandparents moving in from Virginia, and we also wanted them really close, so there was more door knocking around some neighborhood. We had seen that there was a house that had burned down around the corner, but you couldn't really tell from the street. And it was like that for about a year. So we were able to find the owner, make an offer. We couldn't agree on an offer. Waited a whole year, made another offer, and we bought essentially a burned down house. This was really fun for me. And that I was a stay-at-home mom. I think at that point, we had 4 kids at that point, and it took about 2 months. I would spend maybe about 10 hours of work on my end, but we essentially bought the property, knocked it down, spent about $10,000 in demolition cost, and turned around and sold it to my grandparents at that point. If we had not sold it to them, we would have netted about $70,000. So that, I call that my first flip. That wasn't really, it was an arm.
Technically it is, it is a flip, buying something. Yeah. So that
was really fun. I love that. And now my grandparents, they built a brand new home. We got to see that whole process from ground up. And now my grandparents are right around the corner. We can check in on them. They're still able to live independently since they really are, 3-minute walk down the road.
Yeah. So, nice.
Yeah. From that point, I still am looking for other active investments, but knowing that we also had some capital to invest in multifamily. Did not want to be a GP on my own yet, just learning the ropes, and property management just was not have the mind space or the capacity to take that on. So we also became LPs in 2 different apartment complexes.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a good way to start if you have the means to do it. I remember when I started out, I probably had enough cash on hand to invest in not quite 2. If you had $50,000 minimums, I couldn't have done 2. Could have done 1, but not quite 2. And looking back, I wish I had the ability to invest passively first. But yeah, I decided to go the GP route and keep that money so that I could pay my own earnest money deposits and all that other stuff. It's not cheap buying an apartment complex. So yeah. So as far as investing passively, you said a couple of reasons you didn't want to be a GP first. What kind of led you to that decision to go passive instead of, the GP route?
That's a good question. So when I was first learning about what does it even mean to invest in real estate, before we even, went down the road of participating in purchasing homes, from what I understood, people would go, if they didn't have cash, it would start as a wholesaler, and then they might buy a single family, and then small multifamily, and then big. That just, in my brain, that was the progression. And so I thought, well, why waste time going through that particular progression? Why not just start out where people end? And I think there was one of your previous podcast was talking about that. I think it was Dr. Kate.
Rush.
I was like, I could totally relate to that. I'm just like, let's just start at the multifamily. So I took a class to even learn what that looked like. And from the class, realized I did not want to take that on yet. I am still very much interested in that, maybe a little bit later down the road when my kids are a bit more grown. But from that class came an accountability group, and we have met that's been about 3 years at this point. We have met every 2 weeks for the last 3 years. And we all participate somehow in multifamily investing. And we have considered deals. We'll run deals by each other. I could see it being very possible where at some point I do become a GP with these people that I have really built strong relationships with and trust, because really there's no one else that I know personally. I mean, I've grown and expanded my network at this point, but having someone that I've known and trusted for years to enter into a GP deal on, I'm definitely more comfortable with that now than I was at the beginning.
Yeah, it's not something to jump in lightly, I mean, even when I started doing it, my first plan was buy something of my own and then manage it, get some experience, and then bring in passive investors.
Yeah.
And I ended up scrapping that idea and getting into coaching and doing, kind of relying on other people with experience to help
Oh,
me
yeah.
along the way. But it's definitely something that you want to spend some time figuring out, how you're going to do it right before you just jump in. And getting into like groups like you're in really help. Investing as an LP first really helps, just so you understand the scope of what you're getting into. Because, you buy a multifamily property on a 3 to 5 year, hold period. Guess what? You got a job for 3 to 5 years. And if you're not ready for that, yeah, you're going to have problems. But yeah, I appreciate you sharing that with us. I think that's important for everybody to hear.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Just do your homework. You have to trust the people.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to vet them and
Mm-hmm.
to know what you're going into. And I think I was hesitant to become a GP at first just because I didn't even know what I didn't know. Even though I took a class, I had some head knowledge. But yeah, the experience part of it teaches you a lot for sure.
Yeah, there's lots of ways to get in. Like I said, I think the best way is to, play a small role and rely on people who are more experienced to carry the lion's share. I did just the opposite. I thought, man, I can figure this out, as long as I have people I can call when I have problems. It's not the best way to do it, but I'm the type of person that has to learn by getting knocked down once or twice. But yeah, I mean, there's good, better, and best. But getting into it, I don't think there's necessarily really wrong ways of getting in. But good, better, and best is how I'll put that one. But
yeah, or fail forward fast. Although you don't want to fail, but learning, figuring out all the ways you need to learn
yeah.
quickly will move you forward.
I will say you want to minimize risks though, and so, our first deal was a very small purchase, a couple $1 million with not a super large capital raise, mostly friends and family, but you definitely want to mitigate as many risks as you can before jumping in, but
and especially if you're bringing people on. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Especially the friends and family. Oh man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's different perspectives on friends and family. I mean, they're generally the ones that are going to, kind of give you the benefit of a doubt as a sponsor and, a little bit faster to get in. And they probably aren't going to sue you if you screw up, but once you start bringing in strangers, different philosophies, some people want to wait for a couple of syndications to bring their first friend or family member in because they don't want to, anyway, different ways of looking at it. But end of the day, I think you just have to do what you can to mitigate risks and go from there. But
for sure.
So looking forward, I mean, what are you looking to do as a future GP? What roles do you like and how can you play to your strengths?
That has been a question I have been trying to answer for myself for a while. There is my accountability partner, one of the people that's in that group is coming soon to town and we're going to be driving for the first time, even though it's been 3 years. He lives out of state, but we'll be driving around looking for deals and I'll be boots on the ground if he does decide to do something here in Knoxville and it works out. I do love sales. And from a sales perspective, that's where the capital raising comes in. I would love to do that. That's to me, I've just loved winning people over or just getting them on my team and doing something greater together than we could each do individually on our own.
Yeah.
So that piece really does appeal to me. I have been actively looking in the Knoxville area specifically, just because there's been just such tremendous growth in the past few years, and there's a lot of things, a lot of businesses coming in that are just pushing that forward even more. So it would most likely be the capital raising part, although asset management, since I have had some experience, some minor experience, but at least some of renovations or keeping up homes and working with contractors, that piece I can do as well.
Yeah. So, now, if you gravitate towards sales, capital raising is kind of like the natural thing, dealing with people and you are selling them on, your opportunity and you're selling them on, yourself as well. Right. Yeah. So, lots of stuff there. And, I think there's a lot of good things about kind of looking in your own backyard first. I think somebody needs to live close to the property. It doesn't necessarily matter who. We've got somebody from Southern California doing the bulk of the asset management on our Salt Lake portfolio, and I'm the one that's there close, so I, stop by. It's kind of a team effort, but I
Yeah.
stop by. I think somebody needs to live close to the assets, otherwise you miss a whole bunch of stuff. But I
Oh,
think,
yeah.
yeah, going forward, what I did, I tried every role, a little bit here, a little bit there, and kind of settled into my own spot. But you'll figure it out, what you like doing and what you don't like doing. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. And with the capital raising part, when you look at sales, right, you're
Mhm.
ultimately when you sell well, you are solving problems for people. And so creating that win-win scenario where people who are looking to invest passively, who are really like they're looking for help, and then you can
Yeah.
essentially view that from your opportunity, what you're bringing to them as something that's great for them. And it may not be, right? So being
Mhm.
transparent about that would be important too. But
Yeah,
yeah.
it is. It is. And I mean, looking at the sales aspect, why multifamily, why this project and why me, those are the three
Hmm.
things you got to sell people on. Sell them on multifamily first. Order is not dependent, but to get them to invest, you got to sell them on all three. But I think one of the big changes I had, when I started capital raising is somebody thanked me for the opportunity. Hey, we've been looking to do this. And they thanked me. And I was just like, up to that point, I kind of had this mindset that I was trying to convince people to invest with us for my benefit.
Hmm.
And that just kind of, this was our very first capital raise, probably the fifth or sixth investor that I'd brought in, so
Wow.
it was very early on, but that just kind of
Hmm.
changed my mindset. And something you said, reminded me of that. You said, there are people looking for these types of investments, and as capital raisers, we are finding people that want this type of investment
Hmm.
and helping them invest. That's a point of view I wish I had early on, but it took me a little while to develop it. But
Oh yeah, for sure. I think even in that early conversation discovery phase, right? If we're looking at capital raising from a sales perspective, the very first conversation is
Mhm.
going to be, what are you looking for? Like, what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish here? Whatever it is, when you have a full understanding, then you can tailor your conversation to helping them envision them being a part of your opportunity. But also it's a win-win. They are winning, and really it's what I'm so sad about is that mostly sales can have a bad connotation, but when it's done
Yeah.
well and when it's done with authenticity and like when you're genuinely trying to help somebody, it is such a great opportunity.
Mhm.
So when you can fully understand an investor's needs, a potential investor, when you fully understand their needs and you can articulate how you are going to help them,
Mhm.
and maybe the opportunity works, maybe it doesn't, but having that detachment and being fully transparent
Yeah.
and what you can offer and what you can't. And then when they make that decision, and if it's a yes, then it's the dopamine hit almost like when you
Yeah.
win them over. It's I love
Yeah.
it.
It is nice, and I start most of my investor conversations the same way is
Yeah.
I think the people who don't are the ones that kind of give sales the bad name, but you've got to make sure it's a good fit for them. There are some actual, if you look into what the SEC requires of syndicators, there are some legal reasons why you want to make that, you
Oh yeah.
kind of want to start with those questions, but
Yeah.
just from a pure responsibility, fiduciary responsibility standpoint, you want to make sure that it's a good thing for them,
Hmm.
and then from a longevity period, if you're doing a 3 to 5 year deal and you sell somebody into your deal, guess what? Pretty soon they're going to realize, what they got into, and it's not going to be an
Hmm.
awesome relationship. So there's many good reasons to start out with, hey, does this meet your goal? What are your goals?
Hmm.
And then making sure that it meets their goals first. So,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Because I think any kind of capital raising conversation, the investor is going to be thinking about that the whole time. Like, why do I care
Mhm.
about this? What's in it for me? Why am I still here in this conversation? Right. So if you can answer that for them or help them see that for themselves, then it just makes that whole relationship, that working together, so much better.
Yeah. And fortunately, multifamily investment works for almost any portfolio. I think the more money somebody has, the better multifamily works for them. It's just from a diversification standpoint, from hard assets, lots of good reasons. I convinced myself many years ago that it's a great investment, but the more and more I learn, the more I realize that, it should be a part of, everybody's portfolio once they get to a
Mhm.
certain point. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the investors that we're chasing right now, the ones that have, made, built up a certain amount of wealth and
Mhm.
haven't really explored multifamily yet. They're still new to multifamily, and yeah, helping them understand where this fits inside their portfolio is
Yeah.
kind of what we've gravitated towards.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, definitely want to diversify.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, cool, cool. So you talk about, looking for deals in Knoxville, potentially raising capital. Who else are you looking for? You talk about, a group you're in. Maybe we can put a shout out to everybody listening. If you're interested in investing in Knoxville or you're in Knoxville, reach out to Monica. We'll get
Oh
her
man, yeah, there you go.
later. Yeah. So,
Yeah, always happy to chat for sure.
awesome. Awesome. So looking forward, what's next for you?
Well, we would love to get a little bit more active in real estate right now. It's been very passive for us, looking to be more active in real estate, also growing my little boutique
Mhm.
sponsorship agency that I have. And so that'll be a focus for this upcoming year as well. And really, as my kids are starting to get older, they're in middle school right now, but helping them become more aware and involved as they want to be with
Mhm.
our little family adventures, I'll call them. Finding properties that need some love
Mhm.
and getting them ready for people to make home.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about this boutique marketing firm you have.
So I'm calling it Bridges and Buzz. I have not fully launched it yet, but I help niche communities and most specifically either in the real estate education industry or women's business communities. These communities keep doing their events or educational content, and I do that through raising money through ads,
Mhm.
whether that's through podcast or YouTube, events, all that. So I love doing that. It's another sales thing. It's mostly B2B on a national level and
Mhm.
just really love creating win-win-win scenarios for everyone
Yeah.
involved.
And then for those listening, that if you're trying to scale, there's going to come a point where, you're going to run out of network and you need to grow it fast. And
Mhm,
that's where
mhm.
the ad spend, comes in. That's where we've actually gotten a lot more investors in the last year from our ad spend campaigns than we have from, the old-fashioned grassroots campaigns. So important to have that skill set in your back pocket. But
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and definitely happy to talk best practices to anyone trying to get in front of other investors. There's certainly things that work well if you go into other communities to run some ads. There's things that work well, things that don't very well. So I'm always happy to have a chat about what that looks like.
awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, wrapping up, what advice would you give to somebody who's just getting in, or I guess what's the best advice you've gotten so far?
Oh man. So from a multifamily perspective, I was not an accredited investor. And what I thought was that I would not be able to invest in apartments.
Mhm.
And so thank God I had someone tell me, like, okay, it is possible. You just have to know who you need to know. As an LP with our first deal, we did
Mhm.
not have the minimum requirement. And so I asked anyway, and they graciously said yes. I also
Mhm.
recently learned that I could ask for another class of funds, even if I didn't have that. It doesn't hurt to ask, but did
Nope.
not even think to ask for to be labeled as,
Yeah, so lots of investments, and we do this all the time.
yeah,
We'll have different classes for investors basically off of how much people invest.
right, right.
So the more you invest, the better economics you get on the deal.
Mhm.
So what you're saying is, ask for the higher tier funds. You may as well ask. Yeah.
Might as well ask. And that was not something I ever thought to do. But also, yeah, even if you don't have the minimum requirement,
Mhm.
just ask anyway.
Mhm.
And for me, it's worked out. We were able to participate in two deals that I would have self-selected out just from like, oh, we can't participate. But I'm
Mhm.
glad I reached out and asked, and the answer was yes. And so we were able to get in on the multifamily journey that way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. I mean, I've done several different capital raises, and there are times where we definitely would say yes to both of those questions, So we routinely will waive the minimum investment amount. Our typical minimum is 50, but for most deals, I have a hard bottom that I won't cross. And oh,
Mhm,
by the way, for people listening, it is less than 50. So,
mhm.
ask the question,
Mhm.
and you might be surprised at the answer. And then with the investment tiers as well, we set the investment tiers up to incentivize people to write larger
Mhm.
checks. But, once again, depending on where we are in the capital raise, I don't want to use the word desperate, but I mean the more anxious we are to get done, the more likely we are to raise that. So if you're calling us week one asking those questions, maybe not, but if we're set up to close in the next week or two and, don't have all of our capital raised, we might say yes. So there are great things there and just kind of giving you everybody the other side perspective as well. All right. And last question, how can listeners learn more about you?
Oh, come find me on LinkedIn, Monica Kimutis. Come find me on LinkedIn. Tell me you heard me on this podcast, and let's have a chat.
Yeah. And we'll put a link to her profile in the show notes. So anybody looking to reach out to Monica, just check the show notes and connect with her on LinkedIn. And while you're at it, if you haven't connected with me on LinkedIn yet, please do. Yeah. Brian Briscoe. Right. I mean, there's several of us, but if you find one that has multifamily in the profile, you found the right one. But anyway, connect with Monica, connect with me if you haven't. And anyway, Monica, appreciate your time today. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Brian.